Have you ever played along on the have you ever challenges? See what I did there? You know, those lists that ask you to give yourself a point for everything you've done, like skipping school, getting a tattoo, riding a camel, or seeing the Grand Canyon in person. And I guess I've lived a full life because other than never seeing the Grand Canyon in person or playing in the band, I can usually check yes to just about everything else. And since it's my birthday this week, I've been reflecting on my life and my health. So today, I'll share a bit of my personal story, and I hope you'll play along in my Have You Ever Health Challenge.
Healthy isn't just what you do, it's who you become. I'm Dr. Vickie, and this is Healthy Looks Great on You, a lifestyle medicine podcast to help you reclaim your energy, your focus, and your well-being. Life tested, doctor approved.
I call this season of my life fun. I don't have a lot of responsibilities. There aren't small humans depending on me to feed them, and I'm not financially responsible for funding anyone's education. And no one in my life requires my supervision. So I'm footloose and free. My health is complicated. My medical record is pretty lengthy for someone who considers herself healthy. Today, instead of mini medical school, let's dismiss for recess and play a game. Like we had recess. During medical school, all we did was study. An old doctor told me before I started that if I dropped my pencil, I'd be 2 weeks behind. He wasn't wrong. I'm not going to share my age, but the fact that I used a pencil during medical school and the internet wasn't available tells you a lot. Let's get started, and I hope you'll play along. Number 1, have you ever broken a bone and been in a cast? I guess I'll only get half credit for this one. I broke my ring finger when I was a little girl, but they just put a splint on it, so I've never had a cast. Number 2, have you ever had stitches? Besides having surgery, I've only had stitches once. I was about 6 years old, and me and my neighbor were playing in the playhouse when I decided to stand on the tray of the doll high chair, even though my mom had cautioned me against it. I pretended to change a light bulb, and the high chair flipped over, and I'm not really sure what happened, but I knew I was sitting in the floor in a puddle of blood with my friend screaming that my tooth was broken. It wasn't my tooth, it was my lip, and I had stitches in my lip, which made it very difficult to talk. I remember my uncle had something in his pocket, and I asked him what was in his hocket because I couldn't put my lips together to say P. He gave me a really hard time about it too. Number 3, have you ever been in the hospital? Since I like to focus on the positive things, I'd like to mostly remember the 2 times I was in the hospital to have my precious babies. They're all grown up now, and I have been in the hospital at other times. What about you? Number 4, have you ever had surgery? This is crazy. I think I've had about 14 surgeries, from minor things like releasing a trigger thumb to major robotic chest surgery to remove my thymus gland. Since we are at recess and not an anatomy class, you might not even know about the thymus gland. But it sits just under your breastbone on top of your heart. It has some immune function, but as you age, it's supposed to dry up. Though my eyes and skin and hair have dried up plenty with age, my thymus gland didn't get the memo. In fact, it was enlarged, and I had it removed. And let me tell you, I don't miss it one bit, but more about that later. Number 5, have you ever had complications from surgery? You might be surprised to learn that the overall complication rate from surgery can be as high as 10 to 30%. Of course, it depends on your risk factors and the type of surgery that you're having. Some complications are very minor, while others can be serious and even fatal. But I'll have to answer yes to this one too. When I had half of my thyroid gland removed, the nerve to my voice box got stretched. So I woke up on the 3rd day after surgery, unable to make a sound. It was debilitating. I remember one day I went to Sonic to order a diet cherry limeade, and I rolled the window down and pushed the button. And when they said, "May I help you?" I realized I couldn't talk at all. My vocal cord remained paralyzed for about 5 weeks, and I had to rely on a text-to-voice app. Thank goodness for technology. Number 6, have you ever had a bad reaction to a medication or serious side effects? Once after surgery, they gave me some pain medication that caused my blood pressure to drop to almost nothing. And here's the deal. I believe the administration of that pain medication could have been avoided altogether, but that's another story. I've also taken lots of medications that cause miserable side effects, like prednisone and messier and a whole list of other things. What about you? Number 7, have you ever questioned a prescription you've been given? My doctors have probably gotten sick of me saying, "Is that really necessary?" Especially when they've tried to give me antibiotics when I've had an upper respiratory infection that I thought was probably viral. What about you? Have you ever questioned a prescription you've been given, and what was your doctor's reaction? Number 8, have you ever been to the emergency room? Yeah. Tell me about it. Number 9, have you ever had an IV? I think I've had over 100 IVs because I used to get an infusion of immune globulin every 3 weeks for about 5 years. Fortunately, I have big old juicy veins. Number 10, have you ever given yourself a shot? I cannot even count the number of times I've stuck a needle in myself. When I had diabetes, I gave myself insulin shots, and for about a year I did at-home infusions every week through 5 needles I stuck in my belly. And I had a friend who was using the same medication for a different reason, and she told me that the big whelps would be better if I put the needles in my upper abdomen. But listen, she was really tall and I'm really short, so I don't have an upper and lower abdomen. In fact, I've only got about 2 inches between my ribs and my hip bones to work with. Number 11, have you ever been in a wheelchair? Before I got sick, I had already booked a vacation to take my nephew and my dad on a trip to Yellowstone. Since I could only walk a few feet, my sister joined us and we rented a wheelchair. It's a good thing she went because she saved my life. Listen, my dad was a character and he wanted to be the one to push me in the wheelchair. We were in the Memphis airport and he took me on the moving sidewalk. And the moving sidewalk in the Memphis airport is at an incline. What I didn't know is that he let go of my wheelchair. He had a bad knee and he couldn't catch up with me. So I'm careening down the moving sidewalk, and out of the corner of my eye, I catch a glance of my sister in a full-blown sprint, and I realized I was about to crash into the beer and barbecue at the end of the incline. My sister saved my life. Have you ever been in a wheelchair? Number 12, have you ever been injured in a car wreck? Not me. So if you are a personal injury attorney, don't bother calling me. Number 13, have you ever had a biopsy or been diagnosed with cancer? Fortunately, I have never been diagnosed with cancer, but I have had a couple of biopsies. One was for a grade 4 mammogram that was very suspicious for breast cancer. The biopsy was negative, but I can tell you the hardest part was waiting and the not knowing. What about you? Do you have any experience with having been diagnosed with cancer or having a biopsy? Next, have you ever had symptoms that your doctor couldn't explain? Like headaches or fatigue or other vague things that you just couldn't put your finger on? Let me encourage you to listen to your body and also find a doctor who listens. Next, have you ever had a weird disease no one has ever heard of? Here's my story. In 2014, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disease that causes profound muscle weakness. It started in my eyes and it spread to the rest of my body, but the blood test for myasthenia gravis didn't come back positive. At one point, the doctors even accused me of faking. I have faked being well many times, but I have never faked being sick. I went from being able to ride my bicycle about 100 miles a week to being unable to walk 100 feet. I had a hard time using my arms because of weakness in my shoulders, and that's why I had to have my thymus gland removed. And I'm so thankful I did. I partially credit that for having been in remission for 5 or more years without medications. But I have a lot of experience with hospitals and medications because of my disease. So what about you? Have you heard of MG? Have you ever been diagnosed with a weird disease that no one could understand? It's frustrating. Next is, have you ever had a health scare that got your attention and made you get serious about your health? For me, it's the diabetes. When I was so sick with myasthenia gravis, they put me on a very high dose of prednisone, and it caused me to be diabetic. I took Januvia and metformin and insulin shots, and it was miserable. It went away when I got off the prednisone, but as I got older, it started creeping back. My A1C steadily climbed. And then I discovered plant-based eating and the power that it has to reverse prediabetes and sometimes even type 2 diabetes. I still eat meat, but I eat mostly plants, and it keeps my hemoglobin A1C right where it needs to be. I also prioritize my sleep and exercise regularly. What about you? Have you ever had a health scare that got your attention and made you get serious about your health? And lastly, have you ever reversed a disease with lifestyle? It can be done. Lifestyle medicine focuses on nutrition in the form of plant-based eating, physical fitness, social connectedness, which is every bit as important as diet and exercise, good sleep, which is sometimes paradoxical because the harder you try to sleep, the worse your sleep gets. And if you struggle with your sleep, go to my website, healthylooksgreatonyou.com, and download some free resources to help you get the sleep you need, because sleep affects everything else about your physical, mental, and emotional health. And other components of lifestyle medicine are stress management and minimizing exposure to harmful substances. You can't reverse every disease with lifestyle, and you can't prevent every disease with lifestyle. But there are some you can. The fact of the matter is, our bodies aren't going to last forever. That is becoming more and more real to me the older I get. My grandmother died on my birthday, and I wrote a poem about it, and I'd like to share that with you, along with my faith. The day we are born and the day we die are really not that different. When it's expected, there's so much anticipation on the day it occurs. Everybody packs their bags and everyone's ready to go at a moment's notice. And when the time arrives, the family members and loved ones gather around the bedside at the hospital. Friends call and come to visit, meals are prepared, cards are sent, and help is offered. And there is pain. Labored breathing and moaning are common. Often there is a difficult struggle. It's hard. Medication may be administered, which lessens but doesn't alleviate the pain. Family members frequently ask the doctors and nurses, how much longer? But they can only guess, because sometimes it comes quickly and sometimes it's a long, drawn-out process. And finally, it's over. A newborn takes her first breath. A beloved grandmother takes her last. Life transitions from a familiar environment to one that is unfamiliar, but without a doubt, better. Believers should celebrate both. There's a verse in the Bible in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 that says, we grieve, but we don't grieve like those who have no hope. My grandmother died on my birthday, and now she's with her Savior, Jesus Christ. Our lives are recorded by a birth certificate when we're born and a death certificate to mark the end of our life on this earth. It's how we live in between life and death that matters. And we don't get to choose what family we will be born into or the location where we will be born. However, we do get to choose where we live after we die. We can choose to be part of God's family and live in heaven with Him forever, or we can choose to reject God and be separated from Him forever. He gives us that choice. I know for certain where my grandmother is now, and I am part of that same family, and I will see her again someday. This year, as I celebrate my birthday, I'm thankful that my health is better now than it was 10 years ago. The belief that your mind and your body get worse with age is being challenged. You can't reverse the number of candles on your cake, but you can get stronger. You can get more fit. You can nourish your body better. You can get more emotionally mature, more flexible mentally and physically. You can build better health with small daily habits. Life can get better with the years, but only if you start now. Be intentional about connecting with others and living a life that's aligned with your purpose. Now it's your turn to tell me about your health and how healthy looks great on you.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.